Smooch, let's move on to our countdown to kickoff.
Yes, I have that right here, Troop. There we go. Countdown to kickoff, baby.
Countdown to kickoff, and Smooch, this is a game that we've been focused on all year long. There were two games specifically that we circled. That was the Alabama game, and the other one was this week's game, the Texas Longhorns, both on the road, unfortunately. And so it's a night game. Georgia headed down to Austin this weekend, and this is what you play football for as the players, and this is what fans really look forward to for the marquee game that you have a chance to do some amazing things for everybody to see it.
Yeah, from the moment that we played this at the beginning of the show, from the moment this happened.
We want Georgia! We want Georgia!
We sort of knew this moment was coming. There was going to be a day of reckoning when they finally got what they think they want. They were also chanting this when they were able to beat an undermanned SEC team in a bowl game. So there's both of those. So either this is going to be Texas coronation as the reigning, the current king, or this is going to be welcome to the SEC. And do you really want that power G as much as you thought you did? That's what we're going to find out Saturday.
Well, they got it set up, right? If you really look at how it's set up, it's a night game. It's a home game. They just beat their rival with very little problem. And in Oklahoma really is not a good team this year. They got a good – their defense is okay. But if you can't get first downs, you can't move the ball, then – you're making it really easy for the other team who has a it was Quinn Ewers' first game back after coming back from his injury.
Yeah. And
so that's set up just right for Texas. And they did the job. Let's look at Texas' schedule after Georgia. So they play Vanderbilt at Vanderbilt. So, Vanderbilt won again this weekend. They beat Kentucky.
Giant.
They're not a joke.
Yeah.
Then after Vanderbilt, they host Florida. Then they go to Arkansas. Then they host Kentucky. Then they go to Texas A&M. So really, I mean, you could stub your toe in one of those games if you don't take it seriously. We're seeing that this year. That any of those games could give them a scare, maybe, I don't know. But then Texas A&M, who's playing really well this year, Texas A&M 5-1. That's at College Station. So after Georgia, really the only game that should get their attention is Texas A&M.
100%. This is there is the. If you go back just one, I know they handled Oklahoma, but we said before the season, that's an emotional game. It doesn't matter what the final score is. Can they keep it going at that fever pitch for Georgia? And then after Georgia, do they have a letdown? After you have Oklahoma and then Georgia in back-to-back weeks, can you keep it up, or do you slip up to a Kentucky or the David of the SEC, Vanderbilt? And what happens going forward? So the game has huge implications, of course, for both teams. Number one, Georgia could be looking at 2 losses this weekend, and then you're in a must-win essentially for the rest of the season. Not only must win with style points for the rest of the season.
Yeah, you got to win then. But so Texas is number one, and they deserve to be number one, undefeated. The best wins they've had are against they beat Michigan, right? Texas played Michigan. They beat Michigan. Yes, that was a good win. Michigan's just a mediocre team this year, but that looked like a really good win. Yeah. But really, it was it was this past weekend against Oklahoma at rivalry game. Other than that, they haven't. I don't feel like they've been tested by a team who can score points on them, because Michigan's not an offensive team, and Oklahoma is definitely not an offensive team. So they have not played a team. And that was the knock going in, that Texas should be good offensively, good offensive line, good receivers, experience at quarterback. They should be good offensively, but with their defensive front, with their defense as a whole, be championship quality. We don't know that yet. I mean, that's just the truth. Because Michigan is a one-dimensional type offense.
Right.
And Oklahoma is a no-dimensional type offense.
They're almost offense-free. Yeah,
they are. They're allergic to offense with all those all those injuries and then their quarterback situation not panning out, because nobody really saw their quarterback situation being what it is this year.
Sure.
And Jackson Arnold we thought everything we heard, he was the next guy.
Right.
But then losing all those receivers, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Receivers matter in an offense, but it matters more. Quarterback matters as well, and they haven't had great quarterback play. So there you go with that. So Texas is sitting in a situation where they lost their starting running back to start the season, but it really hasn't affected them yet. It'll be games like this, though, that if they're going to lose, this is the game that they got to know this is the one, because Georgia is a well-rounded team, can beat you in a multitude of ways.
Yeah.
I'm feeling like a lot of teams, a lot of people are saying, I agree with the perspective right now that this is going to be a shootout. If Georgia, I just see both teams being really good offensively, and neither team having a defense that will just shut you down no matter what. And that's just not these teams of this season. And I don't think I'm going to be proven wrong Saturday. I could see both teams scoring in the 30s. Yeah, and it's just going to be execution and what do you do in the fourth quarter?
I think it's going to be a heavyweight bout. I really do. It's big boys. I think that – so Texas in the running game, their bell cow, who is, I'm blanking on his first name. His name's Blue. His last name's Blue. He's only averaging 4.4 yards a carry, which is fine for the NFL. That's actually pretty underwhelming at the college level. And then the remaining carries are split pretty much equally between Wisner and Gibson. And of those guys, only Wisner is averaging that coveted 6.2 yards per carry, and he's got the longest run of the three as well. As a matter of fact, the longest run from scrimmage they have this year is by Manning, actually.
Wow.
And so the running game is something that other teams have been able to stop it and shut it down. So things look good there for Georgia. Now, they spread the ball around on offense in the passing game. If I were to tell you before the season that midway through the season, Arian Smith would be having a better season than Isaiah Bond, most people would have taken that bet. But he is. More receptions, more yards, better yards per catch for him. But Isaiah Bond is about 369 yards, 17.6 yards a carry. He's a big play threat, has a 56-yard touchdown this year. They've got a very fine tight end in Helm. He's somewhere around the 300-yard mark, averages about 15 yards a catch. And then if it weren't for what some of the other receivers are doing in this league this year, we'd be talking about Ryan Wingo. He only has 13 catches, true. Right. But he's got 296 yards, it's actually almost 23 yards per reception, and a 75-yarder with a couple of TDs. Ryan Wingo has looked great. He would have looked so much better in Georgia red than he does out there in that, whatever that orange is called. Yeah.
Ringo had a 25-yard run and a 44-yard reception, so that speed, getting the ball in space, and he looked good. Wisner had a good game against Oklahoma, like 118 yards on 13 carries, and then Blue, like you said, was right behind him. But Georgia's looked good up front. I mean, you can say that they don't have a Jalen Carter, but who does? But they've looked good up front, and it's just making sure those linebackers cover the gap sometimes on the edges, especially when you get a defensive end to seal. If he does his job and seals in, pinches in, you got to have somebody cover that spot. And a lot of times that's a linebacker looping around or a safety come in. You got to cover that spot, and Georgia sometimes gets caught up in traffic that's the same thing they had issues with last year. Mm-hmm. And these are sophomore linebackers for the most part. No Smile Munden for several weeks from what we're hearing. But so those guys have not really had – we've seen flashes, but then you see just plays where they're in the wrong spot. And sometimes even with Raylan Wilson and C.J. Allen, both of those guys have had the issues. They can't do that this weekend. This is a game they need to put it all together. Malachi Starks needs to tackle the way he's capable of. Mm-hmm. And Georgia doesn't need to miss tackle. They've missed way too many tackles this season.
They have.
And
that's 100% true.
Yeah, so they're trying to figure some of those things out, I believe, with their personnel. How many snaps these DBs going to get, where they're going to play Starks at safety or at the star. He played in a lot of both, Mm-hmm. And if Ellis Robinson's going to get in there, it's a tough time to put Ellis Robinson he got 9 snaps this week. It's tough to put him in there for him to get more snaps
Well, if you know they're going to throw, I have no trouble with him in, but you don't know they're going to throw. And so there's a lot of responsibility.
He can get lost on some of that stuff because Sarkisian is known for that. He's known for the eye candy and trying to confuse you. And that's what I worry about some of these young players. So you got to tackle well. But what we mentioned earlier that Ewers doesn't – have I read this statistic yet? I don't think I have that. Let's pull this one up, Smooch. It was the Carson Beck versus Ewers average. Yeah. So on passes, 20 yards or let's say 20 yards and more, what the percentage of that is between Carson and Quinn Ewers. Let me pull that up. I got it right here. 19.5% of Carson Beck's attempted passes are for 20 yards or more.
Okay.
And Quinn Ewers is 9.3.
Interesting.
9.3 compared to 19.5. People think that Carson's checked down. He checks down a lot. He pushes the ball downfield too. Moving on with that, from let's see, 10 to 19 yards, Beck is still pretty good. 22.5% of his passes are from 22 to 25. So almost 50% of his passes are from 10 to 10 over. And Ewers is still lagging behind a little bit, 19.6, so 3 percentage points behind him. And it says that over 32%, almost 33%, so 2/3 of Ewers' passes are behind the line of scrimmage.
Wow.
But only 19% of those are 19% screens. So 35 attempts behind the line of scrimmage. And he's not played but a handful of games this year.
No, him and Manning have almost identical stat lines. That's interesting. There's an interesting thing going on in the Texas community. I have a close Texas friend, and the quarterback controversy's on. It's started. They're not in agreement in the fan base over who should be starting. And so Georgia, this game could really fire all that up if Ewers doesn't take care of business. Looking at Texas play, they get the ball in space to their guys and let them make plays. Okay, that's Georgia's bread and butter, is making those tackles. If you watch, look at Mississippi State. When they threw it out, they threw the quick receiver screens and things like that, just eaten up. Dan Jackson was a missile, by the way, Saturday. We didn't talk about that. And if you look at the style, they say styles make fights in MMA, right? If you look at the style, Georgia matches up well. But Tennessee fans, I hope you're listening. Sarkisian is a consummate offensive genius. This is what an offensive genius looks like. Texas. He has something cooked up. He knows what Kirby does on defense. And so this week, they're going to be preparing for the Dawgs. So they might not look the same. You may see a different style of play from Quinn Ewers. But that would be a bad mistake, though, to go away from what you do well, wouldn't it? Right. I agree. But one thing you know is Sark has something cooked up to break down that Dawgs defense. And
he'll dial something up, yeah.
In Texas, I know Georgia's going to be at a disadvantage because the Texas home field is so there's so many people there. It's so loud and they're so into the game. But here's what I was trying to get to earlier.
Yeah.
If Ewers struggles early, do they lose that crowd because they want Manning? Let's say Georgia goes up 17 in the first half. What happens? Does that take the crowd out because they want another quarterback? That's an interesting through line for me for this game, is because the Texas fans are probably 60% on the Arch Manning should be our quarterback side right now.
Yeah, but you want to lose a team. You take out even if things are not going well. If you got a healthy Ewers in there, you take him out and put Manning in and leave him in. Trouble. Let's connect the dots here on. Let's connect the dots here on this offense we just mentioned with where they throw the ball. This is a game where you really want Mykel Williams in there at full strength. He only played 11 snaps this past week, 9 snaps the week before. If you want him at full strength, Jalen Walker at full, just harassing quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. What does it tell you if they're throwing these short passes? You're not going to have much time to get there.
Right.
So what you're going to have to do, dude, you're going to have excellent tackling because everything's going to be up close in front of you. You can't let them get to the second level. They will some, but you got to tackle when you have the opportunity. Malachi, like we said, those safeties have got to tackle well. Your linebackers have got to get there and tackle well because that's their bread and butter. And that's what it's going to lean on. If they got the athletes that can turn these little short passes into big plays, and Georgia's in for trouble. And if they're just going to move the chains over and over, is Georgia going to press them up close and not allow – you can't allow for much space because that's what they want, right? Much cushion. Right. They're going to take that. Georgia's going to take that. Absolutely. So tackling is going to be huge this week. And Georgia's a team known for tackling until this year. And so we'll see if that changes. I don't know. But those guys who are missing tackles have been historically good tacklers.
Right. There's part of it that makes me wonder if there's even one or two players. I'm not going to say which one. I don't like to start rumors, but I do have an idea that someone in our secondary may be injured because he doesn't look like he's tackling the same. Something doesn't look right, and you don't normally see players running through our guys ever. And so, yeah, it'll be interesting to see if that's something that can be cleaned up in 1 week. Kirby has shown, as I would consider myself to have been a bit frustrated with the Bulldogs a few years ago heading into the Tennessee game when both teams were undefeated and Tennessee was number 1 in the country. I had the same unsatisfied feeling after some of the games that I've had recently. And then for that game, on that stage, on that day, Kirby had it all together and went out there and just laid the lumber. And that's what I'm counting on. If you're a Georgia fan, that's where your eggs have to all be in that basket, that they put it all together this week, and you see what we would call our Bulldogs out there doing.
Well, this would be a great time after this game to say, Georgia's coaching staff just outcoached Sark and his group. They were just better. They were better prepared. The game plan was better, and it was executed. And it doesn't seem like we've heard that enough. If Georgia wins, a lot of times it's because Georgia feels like. It's not true because what happens, the coaching happens a lot of times during the week. The preparing is where it's at. And so hopefully this is one of those games where Georgia comes in and it wins against – not going to say against all odds because I think right now this is one of the first games since 2021 that Georgia's not going to be favored in. I think a 4-point line right now. Who knows how it's going to change. And that's just, whatever that means. It doesn't mean a lot because the Vegas doesn't pick the lines well for Georgia. It doesn't seem like anyway. Right. They don't cover. Or maybe they do. Maybe they do to make their own money. I don't know. I wouldn't have bet 33 and 33 points against Mississippi State either. But this will be a game for Georgia to show their quality. And either you're elite. I don't know if many elite teams this year. You'll find out Saturday which team is on a championship trajectory, I feel like. And it could be a great game, and one team could just lose. And you could say both these teams, I hope they play again. That might be the truth as well. And that actually is probably a pretty good prediction that both these teams are going to look really good, and you're going to wait. You're going to hope they match up in the playoffs. Yeah,
that's it. I want Texas to be a giant in the SEC. I mean, we want other dominant teams in. It's more fun that way. This is going to be a fun week. But yeah, I'm guessing they say that your home field gives you what they say 3 points was what your home, and I guess that's the line. I guess they're saying the teams are even. If they played in Georgia, it'd be a pick 'em. I don't know. You never know when something like that's the big time. That is, everybody's going to be there. The lights are going to be on. It's going to be noisy. It's exciting. But at the same time, you're like, we're going to find out if this team is a team with all its best football in front of it, or if they've got a few things to clean up before they take that next step. That's what we're going to find out about the Dawgs. And I've been back and forth on it all year. I was like, this is the most talent we've had on the field at one time in a long time. I just want to see it all come together once. It'd be great if it was this Saturday night. It would be awesome.
Find out if they're good but not great, or maybe they are just, like we said, kind of getting it together at the right time. Because you've seen different flashes during the season where their defense looked really good. You're like, okay, the defense is good. The offense is struggling. Now the offense looked like it's just clicking, and the defense is like, what's happening with the defense? And so one of those kind of years. But I really think as I look kind of toward my prediction that Georgia's going to score 30-plus games, 30-plus points in this game.
There you go.
I just don't know if their defense can hold Texas. Can they? They can hold Texas to less than 30. I'm going to fall. I'm not asking you for prediction unless you're ready to give one. But my prediction, because I'm a Dawgs fan, if you want me to be a national pundit,
right.
We're not there yet. As long as we're still the Dawgs show, my predictions are going to be optimistic towards Georgia. That's right. Georgia 38, Texas 30. There you go. Dawgs win.
I had 31-28. So,
yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one.
I think that for the Dawgs to win, they come out and nobody's hit Texas in the mouth this year. Georgia's been punched a few times. And you come out and you hit them in the mouth. And once they realize they're in a game, we talk about how when Alabama needed character, they didn't have it. And so they lost to Vanderbilt. When they had to dig down and do something late, they just didn't have it. We've got to make Texas show, hey, when you need to put the game on your quarterback's shoulders and say, go get us a win, is Quinn Ewers that guy? Let's find out Saturday. And I don't think he can answer that question positively. I don't think he's the guy. And so we put them in a situation where they have to rely on him, and we get the heck out of there with a 3-point win. And
I'll take it. it.
Yeah.
Yes, man, it's going to be a good weekend. There's only really 2 games that I'm curious about. So I'm setting up. I've been setting this up for a couple weeks. You got 3:30 Alabama and Tennessee. And then right after that game, can we stay sober long enough to watch Georgia and be coherent to watch the Georgia-Texas game? I will be, but that's going to be a great afternoon of football. And it's just one of those times it's great to be a fan. You can look forward to it. We may be crying in our beer Saturday night.
Yeah.
But, man, the build up to it, and then Saturday it's going to be a great fun because you want to play these top games every year. Georgia's got several of them on their schedule, and I'm excited about it.
I'm going to tell you this. If Georgia goes in and pulls this off, I'm going to have the most shot out, voice tired look you've ever seen. If we do a rapid reaction, it's going to look like I've been up for 3 days because I'm invested in that Tennessee-Alabama game. It sets up so much. One of them comes out with 2 losses. That's guaranteed,
That's
right?
true. There's so much question still about both of these teams. They both appear to be capable, but they've shown you enough problems where you're like, are they pretenders?
Right.
Or is it going to be a great game and one team just happens to lose? It could go a lot of different ways. That's why I'm interested in it. Both teams have the capability and have star-type players who we can watch and see how they come through, how to develop, what their identity is going to be. I love that. So I can't wait for it. Folks, it's going to be a good week on Twitter. I'm going to go ahead and tell you, jump on there with us. Even Saturday, we're going to be, like I said, we're going to be back and forth during that Tennessee-Alabama game for sure. Not as much during the Georgia game. I expect Georgia to win this game. I wouldn't be – it's not a surprise thing if Georgia wins. I expect them to win, but I like the anxiety going into it. I always do. Because it's good to have anxiety against a team like Texas or Bama. Not so much if you're playing Vanderbilt or South Carolina. So there's that.
Arkansas.
Right. Yeah. It's got to be a legitimate team. There was no anxiety in that game against Mississippi State. I don't care what the final score was. Georgia was up 34-10, and it never got within one score. So, I'm not worried about that, folks.
Speaking of pre-Bulldogs anxiety, I got one for you. So I have – my wife's always wanted total hardwood throughout the house. So we did the hardwood. I got her we did the living room, had it floored and all that. And so it's lovely. It's this real dark shade of wood. It's beautiful. But anyway, when the Dawgs are about to play, when I've got the Georgia radio show on or it maybe even game day, I can't stop pacing. I can't sit down, and I walk back and forth. And so there's one area of our living room where all the boards creak because I have paced so many miles back and forth waiting for the game to start. The boards only creak in one section of my living room. And my wife's like, yeah, that's where Chris paces before the Dawgs play, or like right leading up to halftime. He just walks back and forth. So there's only one squeaky section in my living room, and it's my football anxiety section. Yes.
All right, that's where we stand, folks. And this has been the countdown to kickoff.
Countdown to kickoff, baby.